Admiral Park Jun-ho stood alone on the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Promise. Through the thick glass, he watched the alien fleet gather in the darkness beyond Earth's moon. There were hundreds of ships out there, maybe thousands. The Valrith Dominion had come with everything they had. Junho was 53 years old. He had gray hair at his temples and tired eyes that had seen too much. For 30 years, he had served humanity not as a warrior, but as a peacekeeper. He had shaken hands with aliens who looked down on him. He had smiled at insults. He had bowed when he wanted to fight. That was what Earth had asked of him. That was what he had given. The door behind him opened. Ambassador Kim Yuna walked in, her footsteps soft on the metal floor. She was younger than him by 15 years, but today she looked old. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. "He refused," she said. Her voice was flat, empty of emotion. Junho did not turn around. "What exactly did they say?" "The High Commander laughed at me. He said humans were good for two things, serving and dying. He said if we wanted peace, we could have it." After we gave them Earth, Junho closed his eyes. He had expected this. Deep down, he had always known this day would come. The Velrath had been pushing humanity for years. Small attacks on distant colonies, raids on trading ships, kidnapped citizens who were never returned. Each time Earth had filed complaints with the Galactic Council, each time nothing happened. The galaxy did not care about humans. Humans were new. Humans were weak. Humans were not worth protecting. "There's more," Yuna said. Her voice cracked on the words. "While I was transmitting the offer, they attacked New Busan Colony, the civilian district." Junho finally turned. He saw the tears running down her face. He saw the grief and the rage fighting for control behind her eyes. "How many?" he asked. 12,000. "They're still counting bodies." She took a shaky breath. "My brother was there. He was a teacher, 3rd grade. He was teaching children how to read when the bombs fell." Ho felt something break inside his chest, not his heart. His patience. For 30 years, he had held on to hope. He had believed that if humanity was good enough, kind enough, peaceful enough, the galaxy would eventually accept them. He had been a fool. He walked to Yuna and put his hands on her shoulders. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry." She looked up at him with wet eyes. "What do we do now?" Junho was quiet for a long moment. Through the window, he could see the Valreth fleet moving closer. They were not afraid. Why would they be? They had watched humanity for 30 years. They had seen a species that talked instead of fought, that traded instead of conquered, that begged for peace instead of demanding respect. They had no idea what they were dealing with. "Now," Junho said slowly, "we stop pretending." He walked to the communication panel and entered a code that he had memorized 20 years ago. A code he had prayed he would never use. The screen flickered and a single question appeared. "Confirm authorization?" Junho typed 2 words. "Courtesy withdrawn." The message was sent. In seconds, it would reach Earth. It would travel through secure channels to bunkers buried deep underground. It would wake up soldiers who had been sleeping for decades. It would power on weapons that the galaxy had never seen. Yuna watched him with confusion. "What did you just do?" "I ended our performance," Junho said. "For 30 years we showed the galaxy what we wanted them to see. Peaceful humans. Harmless humans. Humans who could not fight." He turned to face her. It was always a lie. Before she could respond, alarms started blaring across the ship. Red lights flashed. A junior officer's voice came through the speakers. "Admiral, the Valrath Vanguard is advancing. They're heading for Earth." Junho walked calmly to the command console. His crew looked at him with fear in their eyes. They were diplomats, not warriors. "They had never trained for battle, sir. What do we do?" the navigation officer asked. His name was Kong Timan, and he was barely 25. His hands were trembling over the controls. Junho put a hand on his shoulder. "We do nothing. Our job is done." "But sir, Earth is defenseless. We don't have a military fleet." Junho almost smiled. almost. That's what they think. On the main screen, they watched the Velrath ships accelerate toward Earth. There were over 1,000 vessels in the Vanguard alone. Heavy cruisers, destroyers, carriers, loaded with fighter craft. Enough firepower to burn Earth to ashes 10 times over. And then something strange happened. The space around Earth began to change. What had looked like ordinary mining stations started to move. Their outer shells fell away, revealing massive weapons platforms beneath. Defense satellites that had been silent for 30 years suddenly powered on, their targeting systems locking onto the approaching fleet. The Velrath Vanguard slowed down. Gunho could imagine their confusion. Their sensors would be going crazy. Where had these weapons come from? How had humans hidden them for so long? But that was not the real surprise. The real surprise came from behind the Velrath fleet. Why? UNA gasped as she watched the tactical display. Ships were appearing out of nowhere. Human ships. Hundreds of them. They emerged from hiding spots in asteroid fields, from the dark side of distant moons, from places the Velrath had never thought to look. That's impossible, Taemin whispered. We don't have ships like that. Didn't want anyone to know we had ships like that, Junho corrected him. There's a difference. The communication panel lit up with an incoming transmission. It was from the Velroth High Commander. His face appeared on screen, and for the first time Junho saw something other than arrogance in those alien eyes. He saw doubt. What is this? The High Commander demanded. Where did these ships come from? Junho straightened his uniform. He looked directly into the camera with eyes that had finally stopped being tired. In their place was something cold, something ancient, something that humanity had buried long ago but never forgotten. These ships, Junho said calmly. These are the ones we showed you. We have many more that you haven't seen. He leaned forward slightly. You killed 12,000 of our people today. Children, teachers, families. You thought we would beg. You thought we would surrender. Paused, letting the silence stretch. You were wrong. The transmission ended. Junho turned to his crew. They were staring at him like they had never seen him before. In a way, they hadn't. The patient diplomat was gone. In his place stood something else entirely. Take us home, he ordered. The real war is about to begin. As the Harmony's promise turned toward Earth, Yuna came to stand beside him. The tears on her face had dried. Her hands had stopped shaking. In her eyes, Junho saw the same cold fire that burned in his own. Will we win? She asked quietly. JUNHO watched the hidden fleet take formation around Earth. Ships that humanity had built in secret. Weapons that had never been tested in combat. Soldiers who had waited decades for this moment. Were humans, he said simply. Winning wars is what we do. 2 kilometers beneath the mountains of Korea, General Lee Sunwoo walked through halls that officially did not exist. The walls were cold gray metal. The lights were dim. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and old memories. He had not been down here in 15 years. No one had. Bunker Omega had been built in secret 100 years ago before humanity ever reached the stars. Back then, it was meant to survive nuclear war. Now it held something far more dangerous. Colonel Choi Minji walked beside him. She was 40 years old, with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had been a Special Forces commander before joining this project. She had killed 17 enemy soldiers in close. Combat during the border wars of 2089, she never talked about it. How many are awake? Sunwoo asked. All of them. 50,000 soldiers in this facility alone. Another 200,000 across the other bunkers worldwide, Sunwoo nodded. 250,000 soldiers, the best humanity had ever produced. They had volunteered for this duty decades ago, knowing they might sleep for a lifetime, knowing they might never wake up at all. They had done it anyway. That was what made them dangerous. Not their training, not their weapons. Their willingness to sacrifice everything. The hallway opened into a massive chamber. Sunwoo stopped and looked up. Rows and rows of cryogenic pods stretched into the darkness above, each one holding a sleeping warrior. Red lights blinked on the pods. The soldiers were waking up. A young woman approached them. Her name was Beisomi, and she was the facility's medical chief. She was small and quiet, but her hands had healed more wounds than most doctors would see in 10 lifetimes. General, she said with a quick bow. The awakening process is going smoothly. 90% of the soldiers are already functional. The rest will be ready within 6 hours. Side effects? Minimal. Some confusion. Some muscle weakness. Nothing that will last. Etated. They're asking questions, sir. They want to know what happened. Why they were woken up? Sunwoo looked at the pods. 30 years. These men and women had been asleep for 30 years. They had gone to sleep in a world where humanity was just starting to explore the galaxy. They were waking up in a world where humanity was about to fight for its survival. Tell them the truth, he said. Tell them that the time has come. He continued walking deeper into the bunker. Minji followed close behind, her boots echoing on the metal floor. They passed through armories filled with weapons that no alien had ever seen. Pulse rifles that could punch through ship armor. Gravity grenades that could crush a tank into the size of a football. Exoskeletons that turned ordinary soldiers into walking tanks. The Valrath think we're weak because we never showed them our weapons, Minji said quietly. They have no idea. That was the plan, Sunwoo replied. Hide everything. Show them nothing. Let them think we were helpless. It was a good plan. It was a necessary plan. Sunwoo stopped in front of a sealed door. We knew from the beginning that the galaxy was dangerous. We watched how the older species treated the younger ones. Exploitation, slavery, extinction. We decided that we would not be victims. He pressed his hand against the scanner. The door hissed open, revealing a room filled with holographic displays. This was the war room, the heart of humanity's secret military. Officers were already at their stations, coordinating with bunkers around the world. On the main display, Sunwoo could see Earth surrounded by enemy ships. The Velroth fleet was massive. It would have terrified him 30 years ago. Now, he just saw targets. Status report, he ordered. A young officer named Jang Howen turned from his console. Sir, the orbital defense platforms are fully operational. The Hidden Fleet has deployed from all 16 staging areas. Admiral Park Junho has assumed command of naval operations. Ground forces? All bunkers are online. We have troops ready for deployment on 6 continents. Air support is standing by. Sunwoo studied the display. The Velrath had no idea what was coming. They thought they were attacking a helpless planet. They thought this would be easy. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Minji stepped closer, her voice low. Sir, what about Project Sunset? The room went quiet. Everyone knew about Project Sunset. No one liked talking about it. Sunwoo pulled up a separate file on his personal display. Project Sunset was humanity's darkest secret. A biological weapon designed to target specific alien DNA. They had mapped the Velrath genome 20 years ago. Through medical samples gathered during diplomatic meetings, if deployed, the weapon would kill every Velrath in the galaxy within 72 hours. Every single one. Man, woman, child. Complete extinction. It stays locked, Sunwoo said firmly. We are not them. And if we start losing? Minji asked. There was no judgment in her voice. Just a soldier asking a practical question, and we lose like humans? Fighting, not committing genocide. He closed the file. We have 10,000 years of history, Colonel. We've done terrible things to each other. We've also learned from those things. We are better than we used to be. This war will not change that. Minji nodded slowly. Understood, sir. Sunwoo turned back to the main display. The Velrath Vanguard was getting closer to Earth. In minutes, the first shots would be fired. The first blood would be spilled. Open a channel to all forces, he ordered. The communications officer made the connection. Sunwoo's voice would reach every soldier, every pilot, every ship in humanity's hidden military. This is General Lee Sunwoo, he began. Many of you have been asleep for decades. You went to sleep hoping that you would never wake up, hoping that humanity would find peace without you. That hope is gone now. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The Valrath killed 12,000 of our people yesterday. They bombed a civilian colony. They murdered children in their schools. They did this because they thought we were weak. They thought we could not fight back. His voice hardened. They were wrong. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived ice ages. We survived plagues. We survived wars that nearly ended our species. We did not become the rulers of Earth through kindness. We became the rulers because nothing could stop us. Around the room, officers stood a little straighter. In bunkers across the planet, soldiers checked their weapons. In orbit, pilots powered up their fighters. Today, we remind the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Today, we show them why Earth is called the cradle of warriors. Today, we fight. He cut the channel and turned to Minji. Colonel, give the order. All forces advance. Minji saluted. Yes, sir. As she began issuing commands, Sunwoo walked to the window overlooking the cryogenic chamber. The last pods were opening now. Soldiers were climbing out, stretching muscles that had not moved in 30 years. They did not look confused anymore. They looked ready. Beisomi appeared beside him. General, are we going to win? Sunwoo watched his soldiers prepare for war. These were the descendants of warriors who had fought with swords and spears, who had survived invasions and occupations, who had rebuilt their nations from ashes again and again. We're human, he said. We don't know how to lose. Lieutenant Beek Wujin had spent the last 11 months living inside a star. His ship, the Silent Fury, was hiding in the corona of the sun. The outer layer of the star burned at over 1,000,000 degrees. Nothing should have survived there. Nothing except human engineering. The ship's hull was covered in a special material that humanity had developed in secret. It reflected heat. It absorbed radiation. It made the impossible possible. Wujin and his crew had been waiting in that burning hell for almost a year. Watching, preparing, praying they would never be needed. Now they were needed. All ships. This is Fleet Command, the voice crackled through the radio. Authorization code received. Operation Sunrise is active. Repeat, Sunrise is active. Wujin let out a long breath. Around him, his crew was already moving. They had drilled this moment 1,000 times. They knew exactly what to do. Navigation, plot, exit vector, Wujin ordered. Weapons, charge all batteries. Communications sync with the rest of the strike group. Sir, we have 47 ships confirming ready, his communications officer reported. Her name was Ojun, and she was the youngest person on the ship, 22 years old. She had never seen combat before. None of them had, but they had trained for it their entire lives. The Velrath Vanguard is approaching Earth, June continued, her voice tight with tension. 800 ships. Heavy cruisers mostly. They're not expecting any resistance. Wujin smiled grimly. Then let's give them a surprise. The Silent Fury rose from the sun's corona like a phoenix from flames. Around it, 47 identical ships emerged, their hulls glowing red from the heat. They formed a perfect attack formation, accelerating toward the distant enemy fleet. The Velrath did not see them coming. Their sensors were focused on Earth. They were looking for satellites and space stations, not warships hiding inside a star. By the time their alarms went off, it was already too late. All ships. Weapons free, Wujin commanded. The first volley was devastating. Human pulse cannons were different from anything the galaxy had seen before. They did not fire lasers or plasma. They fired concentrated gravitational pulses that tore through shields like paper. The technology had been developed during humanity's secret weapons program. Based on principles that alien scientists had declared impossible, apparently. No one had told human scientists that Velrath ships began exploding across the void. Their shields flickered and died. Their armor crumpled like tinfoil. Their crews had no time to react, no time to fight back, no time to even understand what was happening in the first 60 seconds. Humanity destroyed over 100 enemy vessels. On the bridge of his command ship, Velrath High Commander Torak watched in disbelief. His display showed red warning lights everywhere. Ships were dying faster than he could count them. What is this? He roared at his officers. Where did they come from? Unknown, Commander. They emerged from the sun itself. That should be impossible. Torak grabbed the nearest officer by his collar. Nothing is impossible. Return fire. Launch fighters. Do something. But his fleet was in chaos. The human ships were too fast, too maneuverable, too deadly. Every time the Velrath managed to lock onto a target, it had already moved. Every time they fired their weapons, they hit empty space. Wujin guided the Silent Fury through the enemy formation with cold precision. He had studied Velrath tactics for years. He knew their weaknesses. He knew exactly where to strike. Target their command ships, he ordered. Take out their coordination. His weapons officer, a quiet man named Zhu Jinwu, nodded and adjusted their targeting. The pulse cannons fired again and again, each shot finding its mark. Velrath command vessels erupted in flames.
Ow.
Their bridges torn apart by gravitational forces. Within 10 minutes, the enemy fleet had lost all central command. Ships were fighting individually now, without coordination, without strategy. They were still dangerous, but they were no longer an army. They were a mob. Commander Torak's flagship is trying to retreat, June reported. He's running. Wujin considered for a moment. They could let him go. The battle was already won. The Vanguard was broken. But then he thought about New Busan. He thought about 12,000 dead civilians. He thought about the children who would never grow up. No retreats, he said quietly. Not today. The Silent Fury accelerated toward the fleeing flagship. Torak's ship was fast, but human ships were faster. They caught up within minutes, surrounding the vessel like wolves around a wounded deer. This is Lieutenant Beek Wujin of the Earth Defense Fleet, he transmitted. Hi, Commander Torak. You are ordered to surrender. Your fleet is destroyed. You have no escape. Torak's face appeared on the screen. His yellow eyes were wide with fear. This was not the arrogant commander who had laughed at human diplomats. This was a creature who had just watched his entire fleet die. Impossible, Torak whispered. Humans cannot fight. Humans are weak. Everyone knows this. Everyone was wrong, Wujin replied simply. He cut the transmission and opened a channel to Admiral Park Junho, who was coordinating the battle from Earth's orbital station. Admiral, the Vanguard is neutralized. We have the enemy commander surrounded, requesting instructions. There was a pause. Then Junho's voice came through, calm and steady. Excellent work, Lieutenant. Force him to land on the station. We'll take him prisoner. He'll stand trial for war crimes. Understood, sir. Torak surrendered without further resistance. His ship was escorted to Earth's orbital station, where security teams were waiting. As the Velroth commander was led away in restraints, he kept looking around at the human soldiers with something like wonder in his eyes. How? He kept asking. How did you do this? Where did all of this come from? Nobody answered him. Back in space, Wujin ordered his fleet to stand down. The battle was over. The wreckage of 800 Velrath ships floated silently in the void. A graveyard of metal and ambition. His crew was quiet. The reality of what they had done was starting to sink in. They had just killed thousands of enemy soldiers. They had won a battle that should have been impossible. June was crying softly at her station. Wujin walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. First battle is always the hardest, he said gently. It gets not easier, but different. She wiped her eyes. I know they were the enemy. I know they killed our people, but they're still dead. Because of us. Wujin looked out at the debris field. She was right. War was ugly, even when it was necessary. Especially when it was necessary. Remember this feeling, he told her. It means you're still human. The day you stop feeling it is the day you become something else. A new transmission came through from Earth Command. Admiral Junho's voice was grim but satisfied. All forces, the first battle is won, but the war is just beginning. The main Velrath fleet is still coming. We have shown them that we can fight. Now we need to show them that they cannot win. Woojin straightened up. There was more fighting ahead, more death, more sacrifice. But for the first time in 30 years, humanity was no longer pretending to be weak, and the galaxy was watching. All ships, Woojin commanded, prepare for the next engagement. This war isn't over yet. Silent fury turned back toward Earth, ready for whatever came next. The news spread across the galaxy like fire and dry grass, on 1,000 different worlds. Beings of every shape and size watched the same footage with disbelief. The peaceful humans, the harmless humans, the humans who bowed and smiled and never raised their voices, had just destroyed a Velroth battle fleet in 11 minutes. That was all it took. In the great trading halls of the Merchant Coalition, deals stopped mid-sentence. In the military academies of the warrior clans, instructors rewound the footage again and again, trying to understand what they were seeing. In the palaces of ancient empires, rulers who had ruled for centuries suddenly felt something they had not felt in a very long time. Fear, Ambassador. Shin Youngji stood before the Galactic Council on the massive station that served as neutral ground for all species. The chamber was huge, built to hold representatives from over 200 civilizations. Today, every seat was filled. Every eye was on the small human woman at the center of the room. She was 45 years old. She had spent 20 years as a diplomat, learning alien languages, studying alien cultures, building relationships that were supposed to prevent exactly this situation. She had failed. They had all failed. Now, she had a different job. Representatives of the Galactic Council, she began. Her voice steady and clear, I stand before you today not as a diplomat, but as a messenger. The chamber was silent. Not the polite silence of attention. The tense silence of prey animals who had just realized there was a predator in the room. For 30 years, humanity asked for nothing but peace. We traded fairly. We shared our culture. We followed your laws. When our ships were raided, we filed complaints. When our people were kidnapped, we asked for help. When our colonies were attacked, we begged for protection. Ashi paused, letting the words sink in. You gave us nothing. The council declared that it was not their responsibility. The Velrath were a powerful member species, and humans were insignificant, disposable, not worth the trouble. A Velrath delegate stood up, his face twisted with anger. This is outrageous. Humanity has committed an act of war against our dominion. We demand. Sit down, Yanji said quietly. The Velrath froze. There was something in her voice, something that had not been there before. Something cold and ancient and dangerous. You demand nothing, Yunji continued. Your demands ended when you bombed a civilian colony. Your demands ended when you killed 12,000 innocent people. Your demands ended when you murdered children in their classrooms. She took a step forward. The Velrath delegate sat down without another word. Let me tell you something about humanity. Something that we kept hidden for 30 years. We are not a young species. We are an old species that learned to wear a young face. Our history is written in blood. For 10,000 years, we fought each other. We invented weapons that could destroy cities. We created plagues that could wipe out millions. We built machines of war that would give your military nightmares. The chamber was completely still. And then we stopped. We looked at what we had become, and we chose to be something else. We buried our weapons. We hid our soldiers. We decided that when we reached the stars, we would not bring our violence with us. We would be peaceful. We would be kind. We would be ... harmless. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. It was our gift to the galaxy. Our courtesy. We gave you the chance to know us as friends first, enemies never. All you had to do was treat us with basic respect. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with delegate after delegate. You failed that test? The Velrath failed, worst of all, but none of you are innocent. You watched us suffer for 30 years and did nothing. You let it happen because you thought we were weak, because you thought there would be no consequences. Yunji pulled out a small device and pressed a button. A holographic display appeared above the center of the chamber, showing the wreckage of the Velrath Vanguard fleet. This is the consequence. 800 ships destroyed in 11 minutes. This was not even our main fleet. This was a strike force we kept hidden inside your sun. One of 12 such forces we have scattered across this system. And this system is not special. We have similar forces in 20 other systems, hidden, waiting, ready. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the chamber. For 30 years we mapped your worlds. We studied your weaknesses. We developed weapons specifically designed to defeat each of your species. We hoped we would never need any of it. We prayed that the galaxy would be better than our history suggested. We were wrong. She turned specifically to the Valrath delegation. The three aliens looked sick with fear. Your fleet is coming. We know this. You have called in every ship from every corner of your territory. You think numbers will save you. You think that what happened to your Vanguard was a trick that cannot be repeated. She shook her head slowly. You are wrong. We have weapons you cannot imagine. Strategies you cannot counter. Soldiers who have trained for exactly this war, and we have something else. Something that your species has never understood. Yunji's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but in the silent chamber, every word was perfectly clear. We have rage. Not the hot rage that makes you stupid. The cold rage that makes you patient. The rage of a people who tried everything else first. We gave you every chance, every opportunity, every courtesy that our civilization could offer. She stepped back and looked up at the assembly one final time. That courtesy is ended. The next Velroth ship that enters our space will not receive a warning. It will receive a funeral. And if any other species decides to help the Velrath, if any other civilization thinks this is their opportunity to attack humanity while we are distracted, ... She paused. We have enough rage for all of you. The chamber exploded in chaos. Delegates were shouting, arguing, some trying to leave, but Yunji just stood there, calm and still. Watching them scramble, an elderly delegate from the Merchant Coalition approached her. His name was something unpronounceable, but he had always been kind to human traders. His voice was quiet, meant only for her. Ambassador, surely there can be negotiations. Peace talks. Something to prevent more bloodshed. Yunji looked at him with tired eyes. We tried that for 30 years. It didn't work. Then what do you want? She considered the question carefully. What did humanity want? Revenge? Safety? Recognition? We want to be left alone, she finally said. We want to live in peace. But we have learned that peace is not given. It is earned. It is defended. And sometimes it has to be paid for in blood. She turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving 200 civilizations to contemplate what they had just witnessed. Behind her, the galaxy began to understand something that humanity had always known. The meek do not inherit anything. They just die waiting. The Velrath homeworld had never been invaded. In 4,000 years of spacefaring history, no enemy had ever reached Veroth Prime. The planet was surrounded by defense platforms, orbital stations, and the largest fleet in the Dominion. 20,000 ships protected their home. Commander Yoon, Daeho, looked at these defenses on his tactical display and smiled. He was standing on the bridge of the Reckoning, humanity's largest warship. It was 3 kilometers long, built in secret over 20 years, in a shipyard hidden inside a hollowed asteroid. The galaxy did not know it existed. The Velrath were about to find out. Commander, his tactical officer, reported, "We have reached the Verith system. Enemy defenses are detecting us." "Good," Daeho said. "Let them see us." The Reckoning had come alone. No fleet, no support ships, just one vessel against an entire planetary defense network. The Velroth commanders must have thought it was a joke, or a suicide mission. They were wrong on both counts. "Launch the swarm," Daeho ordered. Doors opened along the Reckoning's hull. From inside the ship, 200,000 drones poured out like a silver river. Each drone was small, no bigger than a human fist. Each drone carried enough explosives to destroy a building. Together, they were enough to destroy a civilization. But that was not what they were. Programmed to do, the drones spread out across the Verith system. The Velrath defense fleet tried to stop them, but there were too many, and they were too fast. The drones ignored the enemy ships entirely. They had specific targets: military targets, weapons factories, fleet yards, ammunition depots, command centers, communications arrays. Every piece of military infrastructure that humanity had spent 30 years secretly mapping. The explosions started within minutes. On Vareth Prime, the ruling council watched in horror as their military power disappeared before their eyes. Ships that had just been built were destroyed before they could launch. Weapons that had just been manufactured were vaporized in their warehouses. Generals who had commanded armies for centuries were killed in their bunkers. "This is impossible," the Velroth Supreme Leader whispered. He was old, even by Velroth standards. He had ruled the Dominion for 300 years. He had never known defeat. How do they know where everything is? His advisors had no answer. Deho watched the destruction with no joy. Each explosion represented lives lost. Soldiers who were just following orders, workers who were just doing their jobs. He felt the weight of every death on his conscience. But he also remembered the footage from New Busan, the burning schools, the scattered toys, the tiny bodies that rescue teams pulled from the rubble. He remembered the names that Kim Yuna had recited: every child, every teacher, every family that the Velroth had murdered. War was ugly, but some things were uglier. "Open a channel to the planet's surface," he ordered. His communications officer made the connection. Deho's face appeared on every screen on Vareth Prime, in government buildings, private homes, in the ruins of military bases. Every Velrath on the planet saw the human commander's calm expression. "People of the Velrath Dominion," Deho began, "your military is destroyed. Your fleet yards are ash. Your weapons factories are gone. You have nothing left to fight with." Akehi let that truth settle for a moment. "Your government has two choices. First, surrender unconditionally. Your leaders will face trial for war crimes. Your people will not be harmed. Your culture will not be destroyed. Your cities will remain standing. Life will continue." His voice hardened. "Second, refuse to surrender. In that case, we will continue our attack. Not against your civilians. We are not monsters. But against every remaining piece of military equipment, every ship, every weapon, until there is nothing left. And then we will occupy your world for as long as necessary to ensure you never threaten anyone again." He paused. "You have 48 hours to decide. Choose wisely." The transmission ended. Deho turned to his crew. They looked tired. They had been fighting for weeks, jumping from system to system, hunting down Velrath forces wherever they hid. The war had been brutal, but it was almost over. "Sir," his sensor officer said, detecting movement from the capital city. "Looks like several shuttles trying to launch. Probably the government leaders trying to escape." Deho shook his head. "They never learn." He typed a command into his console. The Reckoning had been tracking those shuttles since they started warming their engines. Humanity knew exactly where the Velrath leaders would try to run. "Send interceptors," he ordered. "Capture, don't kill. They deserve a trial." Shuttles were caught within minutes. The Velrath Supreme Leader and his entire council were taken prisoner, their escape routes blocked by ships that had been waiting for exactly this move. 32 hours later, the surrender came. A new Velrath government, made up of civilian leaders who had opposed the war from the beginning, transmitted their acceptance of humanity's terms. They would face justice. They would pay reparations. They would never threaten Earth again. The war was over. 1 year later, Admiral Park Jun-ho stood in a very different chamber than the bridge he had once commanded. This was the Galactic Council, the same room where Shin Yunji had delivered humanity's ultimatum. The seats were filled with the same delegates who had watched humanity suffer for 30 years, but the atmosphere was different now. Earth had a permanent seat on the council. Not because anyone had offered it, because no one dared refuse it. The new human ambassador was Han Nari. She was young, only 30 years old. Her parents had died in the first attack on New Busan. She had every reason to hate the galaxy. Instead, she had chosen to serve. Humanity does not seek empire, she addressed the assembly. We do not wish to rule. We only wish to exist in peace. The delegates listened in silence. No one interrupted. No one argued. Let this war serve as a lesson. We tried diplomacy. We tried patience. We tried everything peaceful species are supposed to try. When that failed, we showed you what we are capable of. She smiled. It was a gentle smile, but there was steel behind it. We sincerely hope we never have to show you again. But we will. Without hesitation, because that is what humans do when the ones we love are threatened, the council adjourned. Delegates filed out quietly. Some stopped to bow to Nari, others simply hurried away, avoiding eye contact. Outside the chamber, Junho was waiting for her. You did well, he said. Nari shook her head. I just spoke the truth. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. They walked together through the station's corridors. Through the windows, stars glittered in the endless black. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning peacefully. The colonies were rebuilding. Children were going to school without fear. Do you think it will last? Nari asked. The peace, I mean. Junho considered the question. The galaxy was vast. There were thousands of species out there, and not all of them would take humanity's lesson to heart. Someday, somehow, someone would test them again. For a while, he said, and when it doesn't, we'll be ready. Nari nodded. She looked out at the stars with eyes that were sad but not hopeless. Then I guess that's enough. For now, they continued walking in comfortable silence, two humans in a galaxy that had finally learned to respect them. Not because they had asked for respect, because they had earned it.